The International Atomic Energy Agency says Iran could resume enriching uranium within months. Its boss, Rafael Grossi, has contradicted Donald Trump's claims last week's US bombing raids obliterated Iran's nuclear program. Since the strikes, Iran's parliament has suspended its cooperation with the UN agency. Since the attacks, which began with strikes by Israel, Iran has been cracking down on dissent. The state-run news agency says over 700 people have been arrested for espionage. This came after the Israeli spy agency Mossad released this footage of what it said were Israeli agents operating in Iran. Activists say as many as 6 people have since been executed. High-profile opposition figures have been arrested without charge, like rapper Toumaj Salahi and human rights activist Hossein Ronahi, seen here on the left. Speculation is rife of attempts to oust Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Mahmood Amiry-Moghaddam is a Norwegian-Iranian neuroscientist and director of the NGO Iran Human Rights. How intense is this crackdown on dissent?
Good morning. Well, what we have seen is that already from the first days of the Israeli attack on Iran, people were being arrested. Iranian authorities have claimed that they have arrested several hundred so-called spies. But what we have heard is that there are many ordinary people and activists have been arrested in Iran. In addition, members of the Baha'i community, their repression has been intensified. Also, members of the Iranian Jewish community, several of them have been arrested. So it seems that we are facing an intensification of the repression targeting ordinary Iranians. And in addition, of course, the situation of prisoners, especially prisoners who are sentenced to death, is unknown. Many prisoners, after the attack on Evin prison, were transferred, and we don't know anything about where they are. Among them is Ahmad Reza Jalali, who is sentenced to death for espionage for Israel. So we are very concerned about that.
Mm-hmm. All that said, how worried would you then say Iran's leadership is about its future?
Well, you see, I think everybody knows in Iran, and also Iranian authorities know very well, that the biggest threat to the Islamic Republic is the Iranian people who want a change. It's not Israeli spies. So at this stage, Iranian authorities, of course, feel that they need to show a demonstration of power to prevent protests, because after the Women Life Freedom protests, they managed to get the control to some extent, not completely. But now, after the war, they feel threatened that new protests might come. On the other hand, they see also an opportunity to use the war to intensify crackdown, because all the attention by the international community is on the conflict, is on the nuclear issue, and so they feel that they can intensify the repression with lower political cost. That's why we have called on European countries in particular, which have diplomatic relations with the Islamic Republic, to put focus on the situation of human rights, and in particular use of the death penalty by the Islamic Republic, now that the nuclear issue is not so relevant, at least at this moment.
Is there anything else that NGOs like you can do to help people speaking out?
Well, see, what we try to do is to try to get a more realistic picture of what is going on the ground, like situation of the prisoners, ordinary people, arrests. But what we need is a stronger reaction by international community directed towards the human rights situation. After the Iran-Iraq war, we observed a mass execution of political prisoners because Iranian authorities were in the similar situation. Now we shouldn't let that happen, and we can manage if the political cost is higher, if the international community start putting the focus on the human rights situation.
Do you see any signs at the moment of protests being organised or protests building and some sort of attempt to overthrow the regime?
We haven't seen any organized protests taking place, but there is always a threat. Islamic Republic, if they lose control just for a short moment, everything can change because majority of Iranians don't want this regime. So that's the reason why they are trying to arrest anyone who can have the ability or potential to mobilize a protest. But it will happen sooner or later.
You heard it from Mahmood Amiry-Moghaddam from Iran Human Rights. Thank you very much for being on DW.
Thank you so much.